As Mark and I were just talking about what we might talk about today, I was remembering that, Mark, when I first heard you speak in Santa Monica, you came to do part of what was then the Super Coach Academy training that I was on, learning how to be a coach. And we were being encouraged to go out and share what it was that we'd seen that had made a difference to us in this understanding. And you and Kathy were just, I had such a weight off my mind by the end of the weekend with you guys, mainly because you just made me laugh for 3 days with your stories and the way that you are together. But I suddenly, like, what I came away with at the end of that weekend is like, this much and it's enough. It's more than enough. So I'd love it if you could speak a little bit about that, because I know there's people who are listening today that, like, their lives have changed. They might not even be sure how, and they're like, there's this really cool thing, and they think they need to know lots of things and what to say and how to speak about it and articulate well, and that's the reason people aren't getting it when they're trying to say, well, I heard this thing that this person said and this thing that this person said, and it's not seeming to land or make a difference. I'd love if you could, I don't know if you can cast your mind back or actually just come to it fresh, but like, what did you see and how did you start sharing, and why is a little enough?
So this is beautiful, and I always love to support people who want to share this understanding with the fact that if you have really seen something, it's made a difference for you, that's what you start with. And that's closer to what people need to hear than ideas and concepts about, I don't know, whatever it is people are concerned with. For me, it was mental health. But for me, I spent an evening for the first time listening to Sydney Banks, and I had an insight, really powerful one, that came to me as the feelings that I, as a psychologist, was helping people express, get aware of, share with all these kinds of exercises and so forth, were just made up. They weren't really worth anything, really, and they were being created from thought. That's what I saw. Now, I wasn't saying that they're made up false. I'm just saying that they're created. They're not. They didn't have a life of their own. That came later, but the real initial insight was you're making up your feelings. They're just made up. So I knew that if people saw that, they would be happy. And if I understood that, I would be happy. It was what I was looking for. The feeling of it, I knew it was what I was looking for. So I went back to the clinic the next day, and I had like 6 hours of individual, clients. And I realized in the moment I stepped into my office, I could not really do what I used to do, because what I had seen that night before was really the truth. And really, if people could see that, they would find what they were coming to me to be helped with. But I only had one sentence, excuse me. So, I introduced it to my clients as that I had to change the work we were doing, and I had one thing to share. They were free to see other therapists in the clinic, but I couldn't do my traditional work any longer. And everybody wanted to hear this one sentence, and I spoke from what I had seen. I really spoke from what felt true for me about feelings and how thought created them. And I knew very little about the principle of thought. There wasn't like a principle then when I first heard Sydney Banks. And honestly, everybody resonated with it. And we just had conversations about that. What do you think of it? How would you apply it? Let's talk more about it. And so what I have done since then, of course, is the minute you start to share this understanding that you've seen, when you share it through the conversation, you start to see more, honestly. So by the end of 6 hours, I had added to the one sentence. I had a couple of sentences. I'm sharing that story because in those days, there were a handful of us in the area I lived in, San Francisco Bay Area, in California, that were trying to understand more from what they've seen, but we were thrilled. See, we were thrilled to talk about what we had seen or our insight.
Yeah.
And we didn't think that we were limited. We didn't think, oh, wait, don't share it till you understand how, till you understand more. We didn't really have that in our minds at all. We were just open to more discovery.
Yeah.
And we knew we didn't know much, and we didn't really care that we didn't know much, because when we were sharing, all of this little group, handful of people, when they shared from what they had seen, they were impactful. People were resonating with it. And so for people here on the call, again, that's what both you and I want for them, is to just start to talk with people about what has made sense for you.
Yeah.
What have you realized? And why that's so important is because when you share really from the feeling of what made sense to you, you're sharing like any three principles person. Because when I share, that's what I'm sharing from. I get into the feeling of what do I know right now in terms of what we're talking about. You don't need to understand any more of the principles for you to start to talk with people with what made sense for you. In fact, one of the stumbling blocks for a lot of new people sharing this understanding new with people is that they think they have to share it in some way, or that they have to find some way to share these principles. So they start talking about the three principles. But that's not what would be helpful. And what's really helpful is you sharing with someone, what did you hear? And excuse me, usually when you start to share what you heard, there's a story behind that. Yeah, this is what I heard, and I went to this seminar and I heard this, and you know what? I found that I'm more understanding in my relationship. So, this is what we wanted to talk to a little bit. I remember I was mentoring a woman who wanted to coach the principals with parents. And she would, when she went to school to pick up her children from school, there would be a group of mothers there, and they would ask her, what are you learning? Because you seem calmer. And she thought she had to tell them about the principles, And again, she didn't really know the principles in a way that she could share them yet. When she tried to do that, the mothers just kind of lost interest.
Yeah.
As we talked together, I just told her, listen, just share with them what you've seen. They noticed you're calmer with your children when they show up after school to greet you. Share what you have seen that has led you there. And that really changed the dialogue and conversation she had with these other mothers. They were more interested once she shared from her heart, really what she had understood for herself. And it actually led to some of these mothers asking if she does anything with this understanding. And she gathered a small group of parents together and just started out her coaching practice.
Yeah, I think that's so, like when you're saying that, it just brings to mind, like for most of us, when we have an insight, two different ways for me, I guess, if I'm thinking about my first insights. The first is that when we have an insight, it's normally comes in language that makes sense to us.
Mhm.
Right. So it isn't like for me, mine was like, I used to worry a lot about having migraines, like all the time. And my first big insight was, or when it happens, you can take care of it then. It's like so common sense, practical. It wasn't like, well, this is consciousness and we're all one. And it was like, and there's a spirit and there's an enlightenment and there's there is no separation. Like it wasn't that. It was like, oh, don't worry, when that happens, you can take care of it. Like, so like that I can share and people know what I mean. They're like, what do you mean? And so I talk about what I mean by that. And really what I'm teaching is the principle of mind. But without saying, well, there's this thing and there's this spirit and this. It's like, well, have you ever noticed that kind of you always know what to do when you get there? You don't need to worry about next week now. You can worry about that when you get there. You'll know what to do then. You would never know what to do now. And it's so practical, it's so relatable because it just it's common sense to me when I saw that. And so if you, whatever your first insight is, it's kind of, that's the one that just keeps giving and giving and giving normally, right? What you see there. And it normally is, it's perfect for where you are. So you had a practice full of clients and patients and people struggling with mental health. And yours was like, well, thought creates feeling, which is totally relevant, practical, and perfect for the context in which you're working in, right? Like that is a subject that's relevant there. For me, it was like, when it happens, you can take care of it then. And I happen to be working with a load of, business owners and entrepreneurs that were worried about what's going to happen in their business. It's like, what you get is perfect for you. It's so tailor-made for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other hand, the other experience I had of being in the principles was, and I know people had this with Sid, is well, I don't know. I went to this seminar and I came out and I felt better. Yeah, but what did you hear? I can't tell you a word the guy said. Like, I really don't know. I don't know. Like, if I try, and then if you try and describe it, you'll lose them. But like, in truth, we don't know. It's like, I don't know. I went in with my laundry list of problems. This person spoke about something completely unrelated to them. And then I looked at my laundry list of problems and they changed. I don't know. I used to say, I don't know, but it's like magic. I found this magic. And that was the best description I had. But people were like, what is that? Like, the feeling of it was like, I was in awe of it. And they would lean in to find out more because I couldn't really describe it. And so they would go check it out for themselves. And great, they would take whatever, then they were on their journey. But it was, both things, the very like very clear insight that you might get, or also the like, I don't know, I just listened to this thing and I felt better. It's like both those things work, but it is so simple. But the thing certainly that I did was try and go beyond that. So I would try and describe everything that happened in the seminar. Like, well, then we talked about creativity, and then he talked about this thing called mind, and then there was there's this metaphor with a windscreen and windscreen wipers and mud, and it's like there's mud on there's mud on the windscreen, but really we're like a clear windscreen. That's what we are, really. That's our true nature, Now I'm totally into La La Land, and I'm sharing somebody else's. I'm sharing what seemed to me to be a really cool idea. Like, I get it. I'm saying I get it. It's like there's a windscreen and windscreen wiper, and I'm off on a metaphor. But that wasn't what I saw. Yeah. It was somebody's story that when they shared it, lit me up because they were lit up when they were sharing it. And so I kind of fell in love with the idea of it, but it didn't become mine.
Yeah, you shared several things that are so important in people wanting to share this understanding. One is to respect the insight you've had, to give it all the respect you can have. That is very powerful, what came to you. And it's right for you. I really love you sharing that. It's right for you. It may look like a simple thing, but when you share it with people, they hadn't thought of it that way. They hadn't added up life that way.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I wanted to add is what'll help you when you're sharing is to listen to people. So rather than making an assumption that they need to hear your insight right away, you might just want to listen to see, well, you saw that I was calm. What did that mean to you? Just so you get a little connection with them that allows you to be guided a little bit about how to share your insights. So listening's a big thing. Many times people are just getting ready and they'll just share their insight, making the assumption that people need to hear that now. But usually if you start by just being curious about why people are asking you this at this time, or what did noticing me being calmer mean to you, it helps you kind of get connected a little more to them and find an easier pathway to share your insight. The other thing you shared is there's a tremendous amount of great ideas out there and metaphors and stories,
Yeah.
And in sharing, you want to see that you want to go deeper than a good idea. And the way you go deeper than a good idea is, again, sharing what you see, what has come to you. Because those ideas and metaphors that people are sharing are what occurred to them. So they got the feeling of being touched once again by what they heard, the feeling of that, and then it materialized in them as a thought, as this metaphor. And that's their metaphor, you see. If you try to repeat their metaphor because you think it's a good idea, you won't have the underlying feeling for it. And so it won't have as much impact as somebody else sharing that good idea or metaphor. That's why it's so important for you to keep coming back to really what you've seen is true for you.
Yeah.
And you stay there, you talk about that with people, and actually more will come to you. So your story that fits your insight will be as powerful as somebody else's metaphor or image or concept. And that's really something I share a lot with the Three Principles community, because there are just so many wonderful concepts out there that I've heard a lot of coaches love a concept and then they start living by it.
Give me an example, Mark. Yeah.
Well, one of those is that we feel our thinking.
Right.
So we feel our thinking is a good idea. It's a good idea. But it's after the fact of an insight, the feeling of an insight. We feel our thinking is not the principles. It's
Right.
somebody's insight into it, and they're sharing it as an idea, you see. So what'll happen is coaches like that. And so they'll start living, oh yeah, I'm feeling my thinking right now. Oh yeah, I'm feeling my thinking. And they'll teach that rather than come back and find their own meaning, and share that. So that's what I mean by it. Sid never shared, we feel our thinking. He never shared that. That's somebody's deep insight. And it's a nice thing to guide people toward. It's a nice thing to look at, but you want to see it for yourself. That's just a good idea. And I have my own. I can find my own. So I could use that as a guide, but I don't want to use that as if I know the principles by knowing that.
Yeah.
You see, that's kind of
Yeah, it's like an exercise in cleaning up your act, isn't it?
oh, share more about that. What does that mean?
Well, just like when I train practitioners, like they come in with so many ideas about what coaching is and what you have to do and all the rules and how you have to dress and what your background needs to be like, and like just so much. And the journey over the 6 months that we work together is basically a stripping away of everything that you think is required to go back to the simplicity of what Sid's pointing to, right? The truth that Sid's words were attempting to point to. And so it's a stripping away, it's a shedding, it's a falling away. But that to me, so far in my baby journey of whatever I am, 8 years in or something, it's like, oh, all the time still they're stripping away, because you don't realize you've picked up a concept. Like, we feel our thinking, we're like, yeah, I know that, that's part of the principles, because we hear it so much. And actually, you're right, that isn't something Sid ever said. Like, you go back to the absolute purity of what he's pointing to in mind, thought, and consciousness. And as you look in that direction, something comes up inside of you. So, like,
Yes.
when it happens, you can take care of it. That isn't truth. It looks true to me. It's really helpful to me, but it isn't. Sid never said that. Like, that isn't the principles, but it's my wisdom. It's how the power of mind, thought, and consciousness show up through this experience right now in a way that's helpful. It's not the principle. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is, like, we keep catching ourselves having fallen in love with a concept or an idea because we fell in love with the space it came from. And so we're like, no, not that. And we don't have to overthink it, but just, I love it that you've brought it up, because it's, when we're sharing our insights, even we're sharing what was really helpful to us, but you don't have to believe the words I say or take on board the insight I'm sharing. It's the feeling that I'm sharing it from that allows you to go inside and go collect your own, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
It's a cleanup job. It's a cleanup job. It's like, it's admitting and having the humility to recognize that you've picked up a load of bad habits and clutter, but it's okay, because you can just shake them off again, because what's true never changes.
Yeah. So what helps me when I get a little far out is always come back to, what do I know now? And once you come back to that, you're regrouping around the wisdom's expression through you. So it doesn't matter. See, that's why it's so no rules kind of thing. Just be free to be yourself. Just be yourself and teach your way. Because if you notice yourself kind of getting confused or getting a little insecure, drop it and come back to, what's your point? What are you trying to share with this person? What made sense to you that you're trying to share with this person? Then you'll regroup around your truth, and then you're there again. The other thing is, I learned really early on, because in the beginning, I was meeting with George Pransky, who was a friend of mine and a colleague at the time, but he was also mentoring me, and he had me go and share what I knew so far in front of 10-year-olds in the school. And my goodness, did I get lost. And when I got lost and I wasn't teaching what was true for me, the kids just started doing their thing. They play, they would wrestle with each other. And when I started to share something that I knew to be true, they started to hear me, listen to me, and calm down. And we used to call it the difference between sharing a rap and truth. And the rap being what you have seen already, what made sense yesterday, what helps you think that by teaching this, you'll be less insecure. You're teaching now what has become a concept. There's no more life into that. Rather than the life of today, what is what insights you've had, how are they alive for you today in sharing it? And it's always kind of a dance between helping yourself see, oh man, I'm a little caught up in my ideas here, rather than what's really true here as I'm sharing with my clients. And so it's a pretty simple thing like that, where you just start to see there's nothing right or wrong here. It's just start to see, if you teach from a rap, you don't have a feeling for it today, but maybe you go there because you're a little insecure with not having anything to say for a few minutes, and so you pull out something that you've already had success with and share that. But usually it has no life to it, because it's a way that you're trying to take care of yourself rather than be alive in the moment with your clients, which is true for you today.
Yeah, and it's not even just clients. I mean, most people here will be sharing with a family member or a friend, like friends in the playground or whatever. And that, like, I know people listening to this will now like we have like 10 times more thinking about sharing than they did before, because they're like, oh no, now I've got to like not use concepts. But the thing is, I guess what Mark's pointing to as well, it's like there's no right, there's no wrong. Like go share whatever you like in whatever way you want to, and then but be up for noticing. So like I'll notice in an hour's coaching call, I'll notice there'll be like a moment where we get real, where just gets real, it gets fresh, it gets alive, it gets impactful, and you only need 30 seconds of that, and the rest, it doesn't matter that you were here, there, everywhere throwing spaghetti at the wall. It doesn't matter, because that 30 seconds and you kind of stumble across it, is suddenly like all your thinking falls away, and it just gets really real, is the best way I have describing it. And you can feel a connection, and that's enough for insight to arise in the other person.
Definitely.
But you never know when that 30 seconds is going to happen, so just have at it in which way, messy way, and then you get to realize for yourself like what, when people's eyes glaze over or they start arguing with you, versus when something seems to land. And that's how you, and then you can kind of, afterwards, like, oh, that was the moment where it, like there's like a doorway into truth just opened and then closed again.
Yeah, I want to make sure in terms of what I'm pointing to, that people don't start to evaluate how they're doing with this. It's
Yeah.
just some things that I've learned through the years about just staying with what's true for you today,
Yeah.
or staying with what's true for you today as you talk to parents at the schoolyard or a coaching client. And that we can't, in the human condition, you're going to get caught up in your thinking as you go through a session or a talk. And as you notice that, just bring yourself back.
Yeah.
And it's really just sharing your way. And you are like any other three principles teacher, when you share from what's alive for you today, what is true for you about this understanding, really. And I was just trying to highlight a few pitfalls that I got into many, many times and actually still do.
Yeah.
And recognizing it, though, is what helps, because you just see it for what it is. You say, oh my God, there I go again, and come back to, hey, here's the point I wanted to share.
Yeah. And it's that we've all made a mess of it, and that's how you learn. so
Yeah.
Back to that message that we
That's how
kind of
you
started with is a tiny amount. We all know a tiny amount, and we'll probably go all around everywhere else as well, but this is enough, and only by having a go do you realize that this is enough. So
yeah
have at it, and you'll realize for yourself everything that I think you've been sharing so beautifully, Mark, in your own journey. So brilliant. Thank you, Mark. We'll be back next week.
Well, thank you. I hope it was helpful to everybody.
With another topic that I know we are excited to talk about. So we'll come back and do that in a moment.